Hello, and welcome to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast. Every week, Talking Heads will bring you in-depth insights and analysis through the lens of sustainability on the topics that really matter to investors. In this episode, we'll be discussing stewardship in the Asia-Pacific region. I'm Daniel Morris, Chief Market Strategist, and I'm joined today by Jane Ho, Head of Stewardship for APAC. Welcome, Jane, and thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Jane, let's dive right into the topic. Could you talk about what are the most urgent issues from your point of view on sustainability for investors in Asia today?
Sure, absolutely. So I think very much climate is what a lot of investors initially focused on, but still remains the most relevant topic for sustainability today in Asia. Just to set a little bit of context, so Asia accounts for half of global emissions, and coal actually accounts for almost 60% of power generation in the region. So you can imagine that transition away from fossil fuel is really the most important topic, I believe, in this region today, and clearly has global implications because we cannot reach our net zero targets globally without Asia being on board. Of course, it's a very complex issues, and policymakers in the region really need to balance affordability, accessibility with sustainability. So, the people and the social element side of it is really important. So, the coal economy being a key source of employment up and down the value chain. So the International Energy Agency actually estimates that close to almost 7 million people are employed by this economy and the supply chain. So we really need to take all this into account when we're thinking about transition away from fossil fuel. And this is kind of what some of us talk about called the just transition, which is doing the decarbonization and the transition, but leaving no one behind. So I think this really remains one of the most prominent issues in the region. And investors, of course, have a really big role to play, both on the financing side for the investments and also on the stewardship side, which is obviously what I look after on engagement with corporates, but also policymakers. So I think climate really remains key, but related to that, there's also nature and deforestation, which is really coming to the forefront as well. So, really deforestation is a key focus as well. We, again, cannot reach our climate goals given that forests are some of the world's largest carbon sinks, absorbing about annually 1.5 times the annual emissions from the US. So for our region, Southeast Asia has one of the highest rates of deforestation. So you're looking at countries like Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia. So another area of focus for me, very related to the climate work. And of course, it also has implications for biodiversity. Asia has multiple biodiversity hotspots and very related to physical risks as well, because, deforestation can lead to flooding, landslide, etc. So shifting away, from the focus just on mitigation as well as adaptation, because we know what the trajectory of temperature rise is going to be over the next 10 years. And that's pretty much locked in, unfortunately. So we really do need to look at how we're coping with those changes with adaptation as well. So I think just to summarize in a nutshell, I think really climate and climate-related issues still continues to be the most prominent in Asia. That's not to say that other issues are not important, of course.
I think it's a really surprising statistic, or at least to me, and I imagine to a lot of our listeners, the high percentage of energy coming from coal. I don't know that we think about that being such an important energy source in Asia, and then that highlights some of the challenges, as you pointed out, having a transition that moves from coal to other sources of energy, renewable sources of energy, but at the same time, with so many people employed in the industry, making sure that they're not left behind, as you put it. That's a lot for you to focus on. You talked about climate, you talked about nature and deforestation. Of course, we all need to prioritize. What for you are the key priorities in 2024 and for BNP Paribas Asset Management in Asia from a stewardship perspective?
Yeah, maybe I'll just take the opportunity to remind our listeners again, like kind of what stewardship implies for us. Just taking a step back with the definition. I mean, stewardship for us is really using our investments and influence with companies and policymakers to achieve our sustainability goals. And we really see this as an obligation and an opportunity, and really part of our fiduciary duty to clients to safeguard long-term returns. So the main tools that I employ are voting, overall equity assets, engagement, and that could be one-on-one meetings with companies or collaboratively with other investors as well, and also policy advocacy. We're very much guided in sustainability, as you know, by the 3 E's. So these are the preconditions to safeguarding long-term returns for our investments. And the 3 E's, just to remind our listeners, are energy transition, healthy ecosystems, and equality. So in terms of our priorities, very much mapping to the urgent sustainability issues for Asia that we mapped out earlier. On the climate and energy transition side, linking in with equality, discussing the elements of just transition in our engagements. I think corporate engagements will continue to be a big part, and doing so collaboratively as well. We continue to be a strong supporter of the Climate Action 100 Plus, which is the largest collaborative engagement initiative globally, focused on climate and focused very much on the highest emitting companies globally. And I've also recently taken a new role on the Global Steering Committee as well, hoping to represent Asia on that platform. And then also stepping up a lot in policy engagement as well to complement that. As you can imagine, engaging with state-owned enterprises, it's really important to consider the framework that the companies that we're talking to are operating in as well. So we'll be talking a lot with regulators as well as the companies on topics such as coal phase out, just transition, role of gas, and renewable step up as well. So similarly, we will be doing that on the nature side and stepping up our work on Nature Action 100 Plus, which is a new collaborative engagement program similar to Climate Action 100 Plus, but focused on nature and aiming to align companies with the Global Biodiversity Framework's goal to reverse nature loss by 2030. So in summary, I think very much focused on the urgent issues that we talked about in the first part of the podcast, focused on climate and climate-related issues on the nature front as well.
Jane, you talked about the key priorities being, of course, climate, nature, and deforestation. Talked about your key priorities for this year. What about new things that we should be looking out for?
Thanks, Daniel.
Months?
I think one of the things you should be looking out for is our Sustainability Report 2023, which I think will be coming out within the next month. So a lot more details to what we talked about today can be found in there. From a broader perspective, we're expecting more regulations on the sustainability disclosures perspective. In Asia, we do see a lot of just jurisdiction adopting the new global baseline for sustainability reporting. And these are the International Sustainability Standard Board's recommendations, the ISSB. So this is quite positive to see and something to look forward to for companies in the region. And then on the nature front, there's actually quite a lot of events that are happening this year. So 2 COP events are set to take place later on this year, with Colombia hosting the COP16 on biodiversity in October and Azerbaijan hosting the COP29 in November. So quite a lot in terms of events to look forward to on the nature front as well, which I think will really be an important topic for investors in Asia.
If I can summarize some of the key points you shared with us, Jane, you talked about how priority is very much still climate, also nature and deforestation, and you made a point of emphasizing how important the APAC region is in achieving those goals. Without APAC, that simply isn't going to happen. You focused on BNP Paribas stewardship activities, which is using our position as an asset manager through voting, engagement, and policy advocacy to help reach these goals. And in particular, in terms of those goals, you talked about the 3 E's, which were energy transition, healthy ecosystems, and equality. And finally, what to look out for. On one hand, new regulations on sustainability disclosure, which you thought was quite positive. And you pointed out that we're going to be having 2 COP events coming up. Well, Jane, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of Talking Heads. If you would like more information, please reach out to your BNP Paribas Asset Management contact or check out Viewpoint, our website for investment insights at viewpoint.bnpparibas-am.com. Just before we go, I'd like to mention that the Talking Heads podcast is available on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/bnppam/playlist and tap or click on Talking Heads. You've been listening to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast with me, Daniel Morris, and Jane Ho. Please do join me next week. Until then, take care.
This podcast presentation includes a discussion on current market events and is not intended as investment advice or an offer of products or services by BNP Paribas Asset Management. Please keep in mind that the information and analysis in this presentation is only current as of the publication date.